For more now on the death of Muammar Gaddafi, and it often seems the focus of the Obama administration on foreign policy, which stands in stark contrast to the views of those who want his job. Consider Texas Governor Rick Perry.
I think it's time for us to have a very serious discussion about defunding the United Nations.
Or this from Michelle Bachmann, who seems unaware that Libya is actually in Africa.
Now, with the president, he put us in Libya. He is now putting us in Africa. We already were stretched too thin, and he put our special operations forces in Africa.
And don't you dare ask Herman Cain about the president of Uzbekistan. For more on this, I'm joined now by former White House advisor to the Middle East and the former U.S. ambassador to Morocco, Mark Ginsburg. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Martin.
The president has been very restrained and apparently reluctant to take or claim this as a victory. And his spokesman talked about this being a victory for the Libyan people, not a vindication for the administration. But nevertheless, this has been a pretty effective strategy, isn't it?
In the final result, Martin, absolutely. There's no doubt that in this first stage of what essentially has been one of the more promising chapters in the Arab Spring, despite some very difficult starts and challenges from Congress on the War Powers Act, which almost dethroned the entire initiative, the United States provided that quiet, effective military support behind the scenes to get NATO's act together, as well as the type of intelligence support that the revolutionary forces needed in order to evade and ultimately surround Gaddafi's forces. So I have myself wondered why we should be so involved in Libya and not in Syria. But the administration handled it just the way, sort of a Goldilocks approach. Not too hot, not too cold.
So what do you think then of Marco Rubio from Florida, his comments that we should have got in earlier, and because of that, Libya will suffer greatly in terms of the condition of the nation following the length of time it's taken to get rid of Gaddafi?
Well, he's not the only one, Martin. After all, Senator McCain and Senator Lieberman were highly critical of the administration's initial hesitation to back up its words with deeds. The fact of the matter is that the American people need to be in a position of understanding what indeed are the stakes in a country like Libya. We have obviously a humanitarian goal of preventing the civilians from being killed there. But ultimately, it's Europe that has a far greater stake. The administration has always believed that in the end, its foreign policy is going to best be accomplished, but not having always the United States at the lead. And remember, the American name and democracy, American style in the Middle East is toxic. There is not a great deal of support for the administration right now in other Arab Spring countries. And if we got it right here, maybe that will trickle across the Mediterranean to Egypt and other countries. We'll say, after all was said and done, the president got it right here, and we have to at least give the Americans the credit they deserve. And that's what I'm hoping for, because obviously I'd like to see Arabs more supportive of the administration's policy in the Middle East.
Absolutely. Trickle-down foreign policy there. What do you think, though, about the future for Libya? Because we've been hearing throughout this broadcast there are virtually no civic institutions. The structure of democracy has to be constructed from the ground upwards. Are you concerned at all about the future for that country?
Well, of course, I've been to Libya twice, and I was supposed to be meeting today, coincidentally, with the Libyan ambassador, because they have urgent needs that have to be redressed. There's a country that didn't have any civil society. It has 41 tribes, all of which have different agendas. There's clearly a huge amount of money to be made from arms exports as well as from oil exports. And it's going to take the leadership of a country where there hasn't been one leader that has emerged as the towering figure above others. Martin, you know as well as anyone, because of your great respect and knowledge of history, that leaderless democratic revolutions ordinarily fail. Maybe in Libya that will not be the trajectory.
We can only hope. Ambassador Mark Ginsburg, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Martin.